Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. In just the past few days, America has bid farewell to some truly extraordinary individuals, legends whose influence has shaped our culture, inspired countless lives, and will continue to echo through generations. Today, we pay tribute to their remarkable journeys, celebrate their timeless achievements, and reflect on the legacies they've left behind. If their stories have ever touched your heart, I invite you to honor them by liking this video, a small gesture to help keep their memory alive. Now, let's begin this heartfelt remembrance. Polly Holliday, best known to millions as the outspoken waitress Flo in Alice, passed away on September 9, 2025, at the age of 87. Her death marks the loss of a television trailblazer, a woman whose voice, wit, and presence helped shape the golden age of American sitcoms and gave working-class women a heroine they could finally see themselves in. Born July 2, 1937, in Jasper, Alabama, Holliday's roots were steeped in Southern tradition and theatrical ambition. Before television brought her national fame, she honed her craft on stage, where her timing, charisma, and emotional range earned her respect among peers and audiences alike. But it was television that turned her into a household name, and Flo that turned her into a legend. As Florence Jean Castleberry, Polly Holliday didn't just play a waitress, she became a symbol. With her razor-sharp wit, unapologetic sass, and the now iconic catchphrase, "Kiss my grits," she transformed Flo into one of the most beloved characters of the 1970s. She wasn't polished, she wasn't perfect, she was real, and that made her unforgettable. Flo was brash, bold, and fiercely independent, a woman who spoke her mind in a world that often asked women to stay quiet. Holliday's portrayal earned her 2 Golden Globes and 4 Emmy nominations, but more importantly, it earned her a place in the cultural lexicon. Flo wasn't just a character. She was a movement, a voice for women who had long been overlooked in television narratives. Her success on Alice led to the spin-off Flo, where she headlined with the same magnetic energy. Though the show lasted only 1 season, it proved that Holliday could carry a series on her own, bringing depth, humor, and humanity to every scene. But Polly Holliday's talents extended far beyond Flo. She appeared in Gremlins, 1984, playing the deliciously wicked Mrs. Deagle, and in Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, where she brought warmth and comedic timing to a supporting role. She later delighted audiences in Home Improvement, proving that her range could stretch across genres and generations. Whether in comedy or drama, Holliday was admired for her ability to give each role humor, strength, and authenticity. She didn't just deliver lines, she delivered truth. Her characters were never caricatures. They were women with grit, grace, and soul. Outside the spotlight, Holliday valued her privacy. She spent time with family and friends, occasionally returning to the stage she loved. She never chased fame, she chased craft, and that devotion made her performances timeless. Polly Holliday's work captured a moment in American culture when television was changing, when characters like Flo could challenge norms, speak their minds, and still be loved. Her legacy is not just in the lines she delivered, but in the spirit she embodied. Independence, wit, strength. She reminded audiences that working-class women had stories worth telling. That humor could be a weapon, that sass could be sacred, and that sometimes the most unforgettable characters come from the most unexpected places. To honor Polly Holliday, who made Flo unforgettable and gave television one of its fiercest voices, comment 87, her age, or simply write R.I.P. Polly Holliday. Let her legacy continue to echo in every diner scene, every punchline, and every woman who dares to say exactly what she means. Though Polly Holliday will forever be remembered for Flo's sass and sparkle, her life beyond the screen was marked by introspection, loyalty, and a quiet devotion to the craft of storytelling. Fame never changed her. It simply gave her a larger stage to speak truth through character. After the whirlwind success of Alice and Flo, Holliday chose a path few stars take. She stepped back. Not out of retreat, but out of reverence, for privacy, for family, and for the theater that had first shaped her voice. She returned to the stage occasionally, not for headlines, but for heart. Her performances in regional theater and off-Broadway productions reminded audiences that behind the television icon was a classically trained actress with remarkable range. She never chased celebrity. She chased authenticity. And that made her unforgettable. In her later years, Holliday lived quietly, surrounded by longtime friends and family who knew her not as Flo, but as Polly, the woman who loved literature, who adored animals, who could recite Shakespeare as easily as she could deliver a punchline. She remained deeply connected to her Southern roots, often returning to Alabama to visit the places that had shaped her early life. She was known to send handwritten notes to colleagues, to mentor younger actors with warmth and candor, and to speak with reverence about the power of storytelling. She believed that comedy was not just entertainment, it was survival. A way to speak truth, to challenge norms, and to heal. And that belief carried through every role she played. Whether she was scolding gremlins, comforting Robin Williams's character in Mrs. Doubtfire, or trading barbs on Home Improvement, Holliday brought depth to every moment. She never played for laughs alone. She played for meaning. Her characters were never one-dimensional. They were layered, lived in, and emotionally honest. Flo wasn't just funny, she was fierce. Mrs. Deagle wasn't just cruel, she was wounded. Even her smallest roles carried weight because Polly Holliday understood that every character deserved dignity. Her legacy is not just in the awards she won or the catchphrases she coined. It's in the way she made audiences feel. Seen, heard, empowered. She gave voice to women who had long been silenced. She brought Southern charm to national screens. She proved that strength could be wrapped in humor and that wit could be a weapon of grace. And now, as we reflect on her passing, we remember not just the character of Flo, but the woman who gave her life. Polly Holliday was more than an actress. She was a cultural force, a storyteller, a truth-teller, a woman who made us laugh, think, and believe. To honor Polly Holliday, whose voice still echoes in every diner scene, every punchline, and every woman who dares to speak her mind, comment 87, her age, or simply write R.I.P. Polly Holliday. Let her legacy continue to shine in every moment where humor meets heart. Eduardo Serrano, one of the most familiar faces in Venezuelan television and a pioneer of the telenovela format, passed away on September 11, 2025, at the age of 84. His passing marks the end of an era, a farewell to a man whose voice, presence, and artistry helped shape the emotional language of Latin American storytelling. Born in Caracas in 1941, Serrano's journey began in radio, where his voice first captivated listeners with its warmth and command. In the early days of broadcast media, he was already a standout, a young man with a gift for connection and a passion for performance. As television began to rise in prominence across Latin America, Serrano transitioned seamlessly, becoming one of the foundational figures in Venezuelan drama. By the 1970s and 1980s, he was not just a star, he was a fixture. His face became synonymous with evening television, appearing in dozens of telenovelas that defined the genre and became staples of family life across Venezuela and beyond. His characters were layered, emotional, and deeply human, fathers, lovers, mentors, and men caught between tradition and change. Serrano didn't just act, he embodied the soul of a nation in flux. He was equally respected as a presenter and master of ceremonies, lending his voice and presence to cultural events, award shows, and national broadcasts. His ability to move between roles, dramatic, comedic, ceremonial, made him a rare kind of artist, one who could speak to every generation, every class, every corner of Venezuelan society. Colleagues described him as disciplined, gracious, and deeply proud of the role television played in shaping national identity. He believed in the power of stories to heal, to unite, and to reflect the truth of everyday life. And he carried that belief into every performance, every public appearance, every mentorship. Outside the spotlight, Serrano was a man of quiet dignity. He valued his family deeply and contributed to cultural initiatives that supported young artists entering the industry. He mentored aspiring actors, advocated for the preservation of Venezuelan arts, and remained a steadfast believer in the power of television to elevate voices and bridge divides. His legacy is inseparable from the history of Venezuelan telenovelas. He helped build the emotional architecture of a genre that became central to Latin American culture. His work inspired countless actors, writers, and directors who followed in his footsteps. And his presence, calm, commanding, compassionate, remains etched into the memory of millions. Eduardo Serrano was not just an actor, he was a cultural steward, a storyteller, a man whose life became a mirror for a nation's hopes, heartbreaks, and transformations. To honor Eduardo Serrano, whose presence defined a golden era of Latin American storytelling, comment 84, his age, or simply write, Eduardo Serrano. Let his legacy continue to live in every scene, every memory, and every heart that was moved by his art. Eduardo Serrano's career wasn't just long, it was foundational. He didn't merely appear in Venezuelan television, he helped define it. His performances were not just roles, they were reflections of the country's evolving heart. Through decades of political shifts, cultural transformations, and social upheaval, Serrano remained a constant, a familiar face, a trusted voice, a mirror for the nation's joys and sorrows. In the golden age of telenovelas, Serrano was more than a leading man. He was a symbol of emotional truth. His characters were never hollow archetypes. They were layered, flawed, and deeply human. He portrayed fathers torn between tradition and progress, lovers caught in impossible choices, and men who carried the weight of family, honor, and history on their shoulders. Audiences didn't just watch Serrano, they felt with him. His presence on screen was magnetic but never overpowering. He had the rare gift of elevating every scene without eclipsing his co-stars. Directors praised his discipline. Writers admired his nuance. Fellow actors spoke of his generosity, how he lifted others with quiet encouragement and unwavering professionalism. And while his fame stretched across borders, Serrano never lost sight of home. He remained deeply rooted in Venezuelan culture, often using his platform to support local theater, film festivals, and youth programs. He believed that art was not a luxury, it was a necessity. A way to preserve identity, foster empathy, and build bridges across generations. In interviews, Serrano spoke with humility. He rarely discussed awards or accolades. Instead, he spoke of the power of stories, of the responsibility artists carry, of the need to reflect truth, even when it's uncomfortable. He saw television not as escape, but as connection, and that belief shaped everything he did. Even in his final years, Serrano remained active, appearing in retrospectives, mentoring young actors, and attending cultural events that celebrated the medium he helped build. He was never nostalgic. He was grateful. Grateful for the chance to serve his country through art. Grateful for the audiences who welcomed him into their homes. Grateful for the legacy he knew would live on. Eduardo Serrano's death is not just the loss of an actor, it is the closing of a chapter in Venezuelan history. A chapter written in emotion, in resilience, in the quiet power of storytelling. His legacy lives in every telenovela that dares to speak truth, in every actor who finds courage in vulnerability, in every viewer who saw themselves in his characters and felt less alone. To honor Eduardo Serrano, whose life and work helped shape the emotional language of Latin America, comment 84, his age, or simply write, Eduardo Serrano. Let his story continue to echo in every scene, every heart, and every voice that dares to tell the truth. Sally Saxa, the actress, model, and photographer who became a striking symbol of 1960s counterculture cinema, passed away on September 8, 2025, at the age of 78. Her death closes the chapter on a woman who didn't just reflect the spirit of her time, she helped define it. On screen, in print, and behind the camera, Saxa was a force of nature, unapologetic, magnetic, and unforgettable. Born in 1947 in San Diego, California, Sally grew up with a restless creativity that refused to be boxed in. She was drawn to art, movement, and the raw beauty of everyday life. By the time she reached her 20s, she had become a recognizable face in American underground cinema, especially through her collaborations with director Russ Meyer, whose provocative films captured the rebellious pulse of the era. Saxa's performances weren't just bold, they were boundary-breaking. She embodied characters who were wild, sensual, and fiercely independent. In a time when mainstream cinema often reduced women to decoration, Saxa's roles demanded attention. She didn't play by the rules. She shattered them. Her modeling career ran parallel to her film work, placing her in magazines and campaigns that celebrated the era's free-spirited style. With her striking looks and fearless presence, she became a muse for photographers and designers alike. But Saxa was never content to be the subject alone. She wanted to shape the image herself. That desire led her to photography, where she found a second voice. Her images were intimate, textured, and deeply human. She captured street scenes, quiet moments, and portraits that revealed vulnerability beneath the surface. Her work was less about spectacle and more about truth. She saw beauty in imperfection, in silence, in the stories written on people's faces. Later in life, Saxa stepped away from the spotlight. She embraced a quieter path, focusing on family, friendships, and her continuing artistic pursuits. She never sought fame, she sought meaning. And that pursuit made her legacy all the more powerful. Sally Saxa's impact endures in the images she created and the cultural moments she helped define. On screen, she embodied the daring energy of the 1960s. Through her photography, she preserved her own vision of beauty and humanity. She was not just a performer, she was a witness, a rebel, a woman who turned her life into art. To honor Sally Saxa, whose spirit still flickers in every frame of counterculture cinema and every photograph that dares to tell the truth, comment 78, her age, or simply write, Sally Saxa. Let her legacy continue to inspire those who believe that art is not about perfection, it's about presence. Sally Saxa was never interested in convention. From the moment she stepped into the world of film and fashion, she carried with her a defiant grace, a refusal to be boxed in, labeled, or reduced. Her work with Russ Meyer in the 1960s wasn't just provocative, it was revolutionary. She brought to the screen a kind of raw femininity that was both confrontational and poetic. Her characters didn't ask for permission. They demanded attention, but Sally's artistry extended far beyond the camera's lens. She was a student of light, shadow, and emotion. Her photography, often overlooked in comparison to her film work, was deeply personal. She captured quiet moments, a child staring out a window, a woman brushing her hair in the morning light, a street vendor lost in thought. Her images weren't staged, they were lived. They told stories without scripts. In interviews, Sally spoke rarely, but when she did, her words carried weight. She believed that art was not about perfection, it was about presence. She once said, "I don't want to make people look beautiful, I want to show them as they are and let that be enough." That philosophy shaped everything she touched. As the counterculture movement faded and the spotlight dimmed, Sally chose a quieter life. She moved away from Los Angeles, settling in a modest home surrounded by books, cameras, and the people she loved. She continued to photograph, not for galleries, but for herself. Her walls were filled with prints, moments she had preserved, truth she had witnessed. Friends described her as fiercely loyal, deeply introspective, and quietly brilliant. She mentored young artists, often encouraging them to break rules, trust their instincts, and never apologize for their voice. She believed that the most powerful art came from the margins, from those who had been told they didn't belong. In her final years, Sally Saxa remained a flame, smaller perhaps, but no less bright. She spent her days walking, writing, and reflecting. She spoke often of the 1960s, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. "We weren't trying to be icons," she once said. "We were just trying to be honest, and sometimes honesty looks like rebellion." Her passing leaves behind not just a body of work, but a philosophy, a way of seeing, a way of being. She taught us that beauty is not in polish, but in truth, that rebellion can be tender. That art, at its best, is a mirror held up to the soul. To honor Sally Saxa, whose lens captured the spirit of a generation and whose life was a testament to artistic freedom, comment 78, her age, or simply write, Sally Saxa. Let her legacy continue to inspire those who dare to see the world differently. Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist, author, and media personality, passed away on September 10, 2025, at the age of 31. His death scent ripples through the political landscape, marking the loss of one of the most vocal and influential figures in modern American conservatism. Whether admired or challenged, Kirk's presence was impossible to ignore, and his legacy is written in the debates he sparked, the platforms he built, and the young minds he mobilized. Born in 1994 in Illinois, Charlie Kirk chose a path few expected. He bypassed the traditional college route and instead founded Turning Point USA, a student-focused political organization that quickly grew into a national brand. With sharp debating skills, relentless energy, and a gift for digital communication, Kirk became a fixture on college campuses, rallying young conservatives and challenging progressive narratives with unapologetic fervor. By his early 20s, Kirk was already a regular on television and digital platforms. He hosted The Charlie Kirk Show, authored books including The MAGA Doctrine, and became a frequent guest on political panels, podcasts, and rallies. His commentary ranged from free speech and economic policy to cultural identity and education reform. He was praised by supporters for his clarity and conviction, and criticized by opponents for his combative style. But even his critics acknowledged his reach. Charlie Kirk's influence was not just in what he said, it was in how he said it. He understood the power of social media, the urgency of youth engagement, and the importance of branding in modern politics. He built Turning Point into more than an organization. It became a movement. With chapters across the country, conferences that drew thousands, and a digital footprint that reached millions, Kirk gave voice to a generation of young conservatives who felt sidelined by mainstream discourse. Away from the stage and studio, Kirk was known for his tireless work ethic and deep ties to his community. He mentored young activists, supported local initiatives, and remained closely connected to the people who helped build his platform. He was not just a commentator, he was a builder, a strategist. A man who believed that ideas, when organized and amplified, could shape the future. His sudden passing at 31 stunned supporters and critics alike. It was a reminder of how quickly influence can rise, and how fragile life remains, even for those who seem unstoppable. Tributes poured in from across the political spectrum, reflecting the complexity of his legacy. Some mourned a leader, others reflected on the debates he ignited, but all recognized the impact he made. Charlie Kirk's legacy lies in the voice he gave to a generation, in the students who found courage to speak, in the conversations that shifted because he dared to challenge, in the movement that continues, shaped by his vision and driven by the urgency he carried. To honor Charlie Kirk, whose influence left a visible mark on American public life, comment 31, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Charlie Kirk. Let his story continue to spark thought, dialogue, and the enduring belief that ideas matter. Rolling Ray, the viral social media star whose outspoken personality and unfiltered humor made him a household name online, passed away on September 4, 2025, at the age of 28. His death marked the loss of a digital icon, someone who didn't just go viral, but who redefined what it meant to be seen, heard, and celebrated in the age of social media. Born September 5, 1996, in Washington, D.C., Ray grew up in a tight-knit community where his bold personality was evident from an early age. He was never quiet, never conventional, and never afraid. From the moment he appeared on screen, whether in a selfie video, a live stream, or a reality show, he commanded attention, not with polish, but with power. Ray first rose to fame in the mid-2010s through viral clips that spread rapidly across Twitter and Instagram. His sharp one-liners, dramatic delivery, and signature phrase "purr" became part of internet culture. He wasn't just a personality, he was a phenomenon. A walking, talking, tweeting burst of energy that made people laugh, think, and feel. One fan favorite moment came from his unforgettable appearance on Catfish, Trolls in 2018, where his charisma and fiery wit turned the episode into one of the show's most talked about segments. But Ray's fame extended far beyond that. He collaborated with influencers, appeared on talk shows, and built a loyal following that admired his ability to turn personal struggles into moments of humor and resilience. Living with a disability, Rolling Ray never hid his challenges. He embraced them. He made his wheelchair part of his brand, his identity, his power. He showed millions that confidence and self-expression could thrive even in the face of adversity. He didn't ask for pity. He demanded respect. Ray's social media presence was electric. He spoke his mind, clapped back at critics, and uplifted fans with messages of self-love and authenticity. He was raw, real, and radiant. And in a digital world often obsessed with perfection, Ray reminded us that truth shines brighter than filters. Behind the scenes, Ray was deeply grounded in faith and family. He often credited his loved ones for keeping him centered amid the chaos of fame. He spoke openly about his journey, his pain, and his growth. And he never stopped encouraging others to embrace who they were, loudly, proudly, and without apology. His passing at 28 stunned the online world. Tributes poured in from fans, influencers, and celebrities who had been touched by his energy. They remembered his laugh, his shade, his courage. They remembered a man who turned every moment into a stage, and every stage into a statement. Rolling Ray wasn't just a viral sensation. He was a reminder that authenticity resonates louder than perfection, that humor can be healing, that visibility is power, and that even in a world built on screens, realness still matters. To honor Rolling Ray, whose spirit lit up timelines and whose voice gave strength to millions, comment 28. His age, or simply write R.I.P. Rolling Ray. Let his legacy continue to echo in every laugh, every clapback, and every soul that dares to shine without apology. Gary Burbank, beloved radio personality and Hall of Fame broadcaster, passed away on August 28, 2025, at the age of 84. His death marks the end of a golden era in American radio, a time when voices on the dial weren't just background noise, but companions, comedians, and cultural anchors. For more than 4 decades, Burbank was one of those voices. Familiar, funny, unforgettable. Born Billy Purser on July 29, 1941, in Memphis, Tennessee, Burbank's journey to radio stardom was anything but conventional. He began as a drummer, chasing rhythm before discovering his true stage behind the microphone. His early radio stops included stations in New Orleans, Louisville, and Detroit, where he honed his timing, sharpened his wit, and began crafting the characters that would define his career. But it was in Cincinnati, at 700 WLW, where Gary Burbank became a legend. From 1981 until his retirement in 2007, he ruled the airwaves with a blend of satire, storytelling, and character-driven comedy that made his show a daily ritual for hundreds of thousands of listeners across the Midwest. His sketches were iconic. Earl Pitts, American, the redneck philosopher with a heart of gold. Gilbert Gnarly, the aging hippie with a voice like gravel and a soul full of peace signs. Howlin' Blind Muddy Slim, the bluesman who could riff on anything from politics to pop culture. These weren't just voices. They were personas. Worlds, mirrors held up to American life with humor and heart. Burbank's impact was recognized with 2 Marconi Awards and induction into the National Radio Hall of Fame in 2002. But his true legacy was in the connection he built with listeners. He wasn't just a broadcaster. He was a companion, a voice that made traffic bearable, workdays lighter, and life a little more joyful. Colleagues remembered his generosity off-air, mentoring younger broadcasters, sharing his platform, and always making room for new voices. He believed that radio was a living art form, and he treated it with reverence and playfulness in equal measure. Even after retiring, Burbank's sketches continued to circulate online and through syndication, keeping his legacy alive for new generations. His humor aged well, not because it was trendy, but because it was true. He understood people. He understood rhythm. And he understood that laughter, when crafted with care, could be timeless. He is survived by his wife Carol and their family, who knew him not just as a radio icon, but as a man of warmth, humility, and boundless creativity. At home, he was a storyteller, a listener, and a father whose voice carried not just through speakers, but through hearts. Gary Burbank's legacy is not just in the characters he created, but in the joy he gave. In the way he turned a microphone into a stage, a sketch into a memory, and a broadcast into a bond. He reminded us that humor is healing, that voices matter, and that even in the age of screens, radio could still sing. To honor Gary Burbank, whose voice became part of the American soundtrack. Comment 84, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Gary Burbank. Let his legacy continue to echo in every laugh, every sketch, and every soul who ever found comfort in the sound of a familiar voice. James C. Dobson, evangelical Christian author, psychologist, and founder of Focus on the Family, passed away on August 21, 2025, at the age of 88. His death marks the closing of a chapter in American religious history, a chapter defined by conviction, controversy, and a relentless commitment to shaping the moral compass of millions. Born April 21, 1936, in Shreveport, Louisiana, Dobson was raised in a devout Nazarene household where faith was not just practiced, it was lived. That foundation would guide him through a career that fused psychology with theology, science with scripture, and personal discipline with public influence. Trained as a clinical psychologist, Dobson first gained national attention with his 1970 book, Dare to Discipline, a parenting manual that sold over 3 million copies and became a cornerstone of evangelical family counseling. His approach, firm, faith-based, and unapologetically traditional, resonated with a generation of parents seeking structure in a rapidly changing cultural landscape. In 1977, Dobson founded Focus on the Family, a nonprofit organization headquartered in Colorado Springs. Under his leadership, it grew into a media empire. Its daily radio broadcast reached more than 200 million listeners worldwide across 7,000 stations. By the 1990s, Focus employed over 1,400 staff members and distributed books, magazines, and resources to millions of households. Dobson's voice became a fixture in Christian homes, a trusted guide through the complexities of marriage, parenting, and spiritual life. He authored over 30 books, including Bringing Up Boys, 2001, and Love Must Be Tough, 1983, with total sales exceeding 20 million copies. His writings shaped evangelical conversations about family values, gender roles, and emotional resilience. He spoke not just as a scholar, but as a father, a husband, and a believer. But Dobson's influence extended far beyond publishing. He became a central figure in the rise of the religious right, frequently consulted by U.S. presidents from Ronald Reagan to George W. Bush. His advocacy on issues such as abortion, same-sex marriage, and education policy made him a lightning rod in American politics, admired by many for his moral clarity, criticized by others for his uncompromising stance. Yet even amid controversy, Dobson remained steadfast. He believed that faith was not meant to be passive, it was meant to shape culture. He saw family as the bedrock of society and devoted his life to defending it. His broadcasts were not just sermons, they were calls to action. Outside the public eye, Dobson was known for his deep devotion to his wife Shirley and their children. He often spoke of the importance of prayer, humility, and grace in daily life. He believed that the home was a sacred space, and that every decision made within it had eternal significance. James C. Dobson's legacy lies in his ability to connect faith with daily family life. He built a vast network of books, broadcasts, and organizations that continue to influence millions of evangelical Christians worldwide. His voice may be silenced, but his message endures in churches, in homes, and in the hearts of those who found guidance in his words. To honor James C. Dobson, whose life shaped the spiritual landscape of a nation, comment 88, his age, or simply write James C. Dobson. Let his legacy continue to guide those who seek faith, family, and purpose. Frank Caprio, the longtime Providence judge whose televised courtroom moments made him a beloved figure far beyond Rhode Island, passed away at the age of 87. His death marks the loss of a man who redefined what it meant to wear the robe, not as a symbol of authority, but as a mantle of empathy, humor, and humanity. Born November 23, 1936, in Providence, Rhode Island, Caprio was the son of Italian immigrants. His upbringing was modest, shaped by hard work, faith, and a deep respect for community. That foundation would guide him through a career that spanned nearly 4 decades on the bench, where he presided not with cold detachment, but with warmth and understanding. Caprio's courtroom was unlike any other. From 1985 until his retirement in 2023, he handled more than 200,000 cases, ranging from parking violations to minor traffic infractions. But it wasn't the cases that made him famous. It was the way he treated people. He listened. He laughed. He forgave. He weighed circumstances with care, often giving breaks to those struggling with poverty, illness, or personal hardship. His approach earned him the nickname the world's nicest judge, and it wasn't just a title, it was a truth. Caprio believed that justice should be fair, but also kind. That the law should serve people, not punish them blindly. And that every person who stood before him deserved dignity, no matter their mistake. The show, Caught in Providence, which began as a local broadcast, eventually gained nationwide distribution on ABC and later went viral on YouTube and Facebook. Short clips of Caprio's rulings, filled with compassion, humor, and common sense, drew hundreds of millions of views. By 2020, the show's YouTube channel had surpassed 500 million views, placing Caprio among the most watched judicial figures in the world. But despite his fame, Caprio remained grounded. He never saw the camera as a spotlight. It was a window. A way to show the world that justice could be gentle, that authority could be humane, that a courtroom could be a place of healing, not just judgment. Outside of television, Caprio was deeply involved in civic life. He served on the Rhode Island Board of Governors for higher education and supported numerous community programs in his hometown. He believed in education, opportunity, and the power of public service. His legacy is not just legal, it is cultural, emotional, and deeply personal. Frank Caprio's passing leaves behind more than a resume. It leaves behind a philosophy, a way of seeing people not as case numbers but as stories, a way of practicing law not as punishment but as compassion. His legacy lives in every clip that made someone smile, every ruling that gave someone hope, and every viewer who saw in him the kind of justice they wish the world had more of. To honor Frank Caprio, whose courtroom became a sanctuary and whose rulings became lessons in grace, comment 87, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Frank Caprio. Let his legacy continue to echo in every act of fairness, every moment of empathy, and every heart that believes justice can be kind. Terence Stamp, the English actor renowned for his subtle, complex, and compelling roles, died on August 17, 2025, at the age of 86. His passing marks the end of a career that spanned more than 6 decades, a career defined not by volume but by gravity. Stamp didn't chase the spotlight. He drew it in. Born July 22, 1939 in Stepney, London, Stamp emerged from working-class roots with a quiet intensity that would become his signature. His film debut in Billy Budd, 1962, earned him immediate acclaim, including an Academy Award nomination and a BAFTA for Most Promising Newcomer. From the beginning, Stamp was not just an actor, he was a presence. Throughout the 1960s, he became a leading figure in British cinema, with standout roles in The Collector, 1965, and Far from the Madding Crowd, 1967. His performances were marked by restraint, emotional precision, and a kind of haunted beauty. He could say more with a glance than most actors could with a monologue. International audiences came to know him best as General Zod in Superman, 1978, and Superman Roman II, 1980, where his commanding delivery of "Kneel before Zod" became one of the franchise's most quoted lines. But Stamp never allowed himself to be typecast. He moved fluidly between genres, from blockbuster villainy to art house introspection. In The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, 1994, Stamp portrayed Burnett, a transgender woman with grace, dignity, and quiet strength. The role earned him critical acclaim and an Australian Film Institute nomination, proving once again that Stamp's power lay in his ability to inhabit complexity without spectacle. He continued to surprise audiences with roles in Wall Street, 1987, Star Wars, Episode I: The Phantom Menace, 1999, and The Limey, 1999, where his portrayal of a grieving father seeking justice was hailed as one of his finest performances. In total, his career included more than 60 films, along with television appearances and voice work that extended his reach into new generations. Stamp was not just glamorous, he was magnetic. In 1995, Empire magazine named him one of the 100 most glamorous stars in film history, a recognition of his enduring charisma and enigmatic allure. But behind the camera, Stamp was introspective, philosophical, and deeply spiritual. He spoke often of meditation, solitude, and the search for meaning beyond fame. He continued working into his later years, never losing the precision that defined his early performances. Directors admired his discipline. Co-stars respected his quiet intensity. Audiences felt his presence, always grounded, always real. Terence Stamp's legacy is not just in the roles he played, but in the way he played them, with elegance, with restraint, with a kind of emotional truth that lingered long after the credits rolled. He showed that power doesn't need volume, that beauty can be broken, that silence can speak. To remember Terence Stamp, the brilliant British actor whose roles brought depth, elegance, and unforgettable power to the screen, comment 86, his age, or simply write R.I.P. Terence Stamp. Let his legacy continue to echo in every quiet moment that dares to hold meaning. For decades, Carol Burnett has been the beating heart of American comedy. Her voice lifted millions from sorrow. Her face became a universal emblem of joy. Through the genius of the Carol Burnett Show and her unforgettable portrayal of Eunice, she earned a place in the soul of a nation. One laugh, one tear, one sketch at a time, she built a bond with audiences that never faded. But behind the red curtains and the radiant smile was a story few ever saw, a childhood marked by abandonment, addiction, and aching silence. Born in 1933 in San Antonio, Texas, Carol entered a world without safety nets. Her father, once a projectionist enchanted by cinema's glow, was consumed by alcohol. Her mother, equally trapped by addiction, drifted through Carol's childhood like a ghost, rarely sober, emotionally absent, and unpredictably cruel. By the time Carol was old enough to understand her surroundings, neglect had already etched itself into her spirit. Both parents would eventually die from alcohol-related illness, but their absence had begun long before. Custody fell to her maternal grandmother, Mabel White, a woman of modest means but fierce devotion. In 1940, they moved to Hollywood, settling in a decaying boarding house, squeezed into a single room with peeling walls and neighbors lost to despair. Yet within that broken place, Carol found something her parents never gave her: unconditional love. Still, love could not erase the fractures already carved into her soul. Yearning for escape, she invented an imaginary twin sister named Karen, confident, radiant, bold. Carol would climb the fire escape, change clothes, shift her demeanor, and descend again as Karen. Moments later, she'd reappear as herself, quiet, invisible, desperate for affection. This wasn't play. It was survival, a performance born not for applause but for love. On Saturdays, she and her grandmother spent their only quarter on movie tickets. For 2 hours, Carol found sanctuary. Beauty, harmony, affection, and meaning danced across the screen in a language she understood more deeply than anything spoken at home. In the dark, she glimpsed what life could be, a world kinder, brighter, safer. But when the films ended, hunger and reality returned. And yet, from that hunger came brilliance. Carol Burnett didn't just survive, she transformed. She turned pain into punchlines, sorrow into sketches, and silence into song. Her comedy was never just funny, it was healing. She gave voice to the voiceless, dignity to the broken, and joy to those who had forgotten how to laugh. She was grace wrapped in humor, resilience hidden in rhythm. Her sketches weren't just entertainment, they were medicine. And her show wasn't just a variety hour, it was a lifeline. Carol Burnett was never only a comedian. She was a mirror of unfiltered humanity. She showed us that laughter could coexist with grief, that performance could be a form of prayer, that even the most wounded souls could become beacons of light. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became a legacy and whose pain became a gift, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to shine in every smile, every sketch, and every soul that finds strength and joy. Clyde Randy Boone, January 17, 1942, August 28, 2025, was an American actor and singer best known for his role in the series The Virginian as Randy Benton, a young ranch hand who played guitar and sang. Boone was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina on January 17, 1942. He enrolled at North Carolina State College as a mathematics major. He began performing as a folk singer at a bar and eventually dropped out of school to play guitar and sing. That decision led to 18 months of traveling around the United States, primarily by hitchhiking. He used his musical talents to barter, with his performances providing meals and sleeping quarters. He entered contests to win additional money. Boone started his career in the 1962-1963 TV series It's a Man's World as Vern Hodges, a talented guitarist from Boone's native North Carolina. After playing guitar and singing in the Virginian and starring as a country singer in the 1966 film Country Boy, he played Francis Wilder in the Western series Cimarron Strip along with Stuart Whitman. Boone died on August 28, 2025 at the age of 83. As the years passed and the spotlight softened, Carol Burnett never faded, she evolved. Her show ended in 1978, but her presence never left American culture. She returned to television in specials, guest appearances, and dramatic roles that revealed the depth behind the comedy. She wasn't just funny, she was fearless, and she never stopped growing. In the decades that followed, Carol became a mentor, a matriarch, and a living archive of television history. Younger comedians, women especially, looked to her not just as a pioneer, but as proof that brilliance could coexist with kindness. She paved the way for sketch comedy to be led by women, for vulnerability to be part of the punchline, and for variety to mean more than spectacle. Her memoirs revealed the full scope of her journey, the pain, the grit, the gratitude. She spoke openly about her childhood, her struggles, and the moments that nearly broke her. But she also spoke of joy, of the thrill of live performance, the magic of laughter shared, and the healing power of connection. She never forgot the man who gave her that first $50, or the shipbuilding millionaire who sent her to New York, or the grandmother who loved her fiercely in a world that didn't. Carol Burnett's life was a mosaic of generosity, received and returned. She helped countless performers, funded scholarships, and always made time for fans who saw in her not just a star, but a friend. And through it all, she kept laughing, even in grief, even in doubt, even when the world felt heavy. Because laughter for Carol was never escape, it was transformation. It was how she turned silence into song, pain into performance, and loneliness into legacy. Her final years were marked by reflection, celebration, and continued creativity. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a Kennedy Center honor, and countless Lifetime Achievement Awards. But none of them meant more than the letters from fans. Those who said her voice had lifted them from sorrow, her sketches had saved their sanity, her presence had made them feel less alone. Carol Burnett's legacy is not just in the laughs she gave, it's in the lives she touched. In the girl who once stole toilet paper from a theater bathroom, too proud to beg and too poor to buy, who grew into a woman who gave the world its most joyful sound. To honor Carol Burnett, whose life was stitched from struggle and sewn into joy, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every laugh, every sketch, and every soul who finds strength in humor. As the curtain fell on the Carol Burnett Show in 1978, Carol didn't retreat, she reinvented. She returned to television in specials and guest roles, often trading slapstick for subtlety. In dramatic turns on shows like Mad About You and Law and Order, SVU, she revealed a depth that had always been there, hidden beneath the comedy. She wasn't just a performer, she was a storyteller. And her stories, whether whispered or sung, carried the weight of lived truth. She never stopped working. She voiced characters in animated films, appeared in Broadway revivals, and lent her presence to tributes honoring the very medium she helped shape. But more than that, she became a mentor, a quiet guide for the next generation of performers, especially women, who saw in her not just a pioneer, but a possibility. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, Kristen Wiig, each of them has spoken of Carol with reverence, not just for her timing or her talent, but for her courage. In a time when women were rarely given control, Carol demanded it. She produced, she wrote, she led. And she did it with grace, humor, and an unwavering belief that laughter could be revolutionary. Her influence wasn't confined to comedy. It stretched into the way television was made, the way performers connected with audiences, The way vulnerability could be woven into variety. She taught us that the best sketches weren't just funny, they were human. That the best characters weren't just exaggerated, they were honest. And through it all, she remained humble. She never chased fame. She never courted controversy. She simply kept showing up with warmth, with wit, and with a heart that never stopped giving. In her later years, Carol became a living archive. Her interviews were masterclasses. Her memoirs were roadmaps. Her presence at award shows, tributes, and retrospectives reminded the world that greatness doesn't fade, it deepens. She spoke often of gratitude, of the grandmother who saved her, of the strangers who believed in her, of the fans who made her feel seen. She never forgot where she came from. The single room in a boarding house, the stolen toilet paper, the imaginary twin, the hurricane named Carol. Each moment, each memory became part of the mosaic she carried into every performance, and when she looked back, she didn't see a career. She saw a life built on risk, resilience, and the radical act of making people laugh. Carol Burnett's legacy is not just in the sketches she performed, but in the lives she touched. In the girl who found her voice through a Tarzan yell. In the woman who turned pain into punchlines. In the audiences who felt, for a moment, that the world was a little kinder. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became a lifeline and whose story became a beacon, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her legacy continue to echo in every laugh, every risk, and every soul who dares to turn sorrow into song. As Carol Burnett aged, the world didn't forget her. It leaned in closer. She became a living bridge between generations, a reminder of a time when television was communal, when laughter was shared across living rooms, and when variety shows stitched together music, satire, and heart. Her signature ear tug, a silent nod to her grandmother, remained one of the most intimate gestures ever broadcast. It wasn't just a habit, it was a ritual, a whispered thank you to the woman who gave her love when the world gave her nothing. In interviews, Carol spoke with candor and grace. She reflected on fame not as a conquest, but as a gift. "I never thought I'd be famous," she said. "I just wanted to make people laugh the way the movies made me feel." That humility never left her. Even as accolades piled up, Emmys, Golden Globes, a Presidential Medal of Freedom, she remained grounded in gratitude. She often said her greatest honor was being remembered. She continued to appear on television, not as a relic, but as a revered guest. Her presence on shows like Better Call Saul and Desperate Housewives reminded audiences that her talent was timeless. She could still command a scene, still deliver a line with perfect timing, still make silence feel sacred. But perhaps her most powerful role in later life was as a storyteller. Her memoirs, One More Time, This Time Together, and In Such Good Company, offered readers not just behind-the-scenes anecdotes, but emotional truths. She wrote about loss, about love, about the ache of watching friends fade and the joy of watching young artists rise. Her words were never self-congratulatory. They were generous. She wanted others to know that pain could be survived, that dreams could be delayed but not denied. She spoke often of her daughter Carrie, whose death from cancer in 2002 left a wound that never fully healed. Carol described their bond as fierce, creative, and sacred. They wrote together, laughed together, and faced illness with courage. "Carrie taught me how to live," Carol said, even as she was dying. That grief became part of her voice, quieter, deeper, more resonant. It added weight to her laughter, making it feel even more precious. Carol Burnett's legacy is not just in the sketches she performed or the characters she created. It's in the way she made people feel. Safe, seen, lifted. She turned comedy into connection. She turned hardship into hope. And she turned a broken beginning into a life that healed others. Her influence lives on in every woman who steps onto a stage with courage, in every performer who dares to be silly and sincere, in every audience member who finds comfort in laughter that doesn't mock, but embraces. And at the end of each show, she'd sing, "I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song." It was never just a sign-off. It was a benediction. A promise that joy, even fleeting, could be shared. That time, even brief, could be meaningful. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became legacy and whose life became light, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every sketch, every smile, and every soul who finds strength in joy. Carol Burnett's life was never just a climb, it was a balancing act, between spotlight and solitude, between laughter and loss. Between the woman the world adored and the woman who quietly held her family together through storms no audience ever saw. Her marriage to Joe Hamilton, though fruitful in collaboration, eventually unraveled under the weight of emotional distance. The man who helped shape her show's success became increasingly withdrawn, and Carol, ever the peacemaker, found herself trying to bridge a gap that kept widening. Their divorce in 1984 was quiet, dignified, and deeply painful. She once said, "We didn't stop loving each other, we just stopped knowing how." But the deepest wound came years later, with the loss of her daughter, Carrie. Carrie Hamilton was not just Carol's child. She was her creative partner, her confidante, her mirror. Together they wrote plays, shared stages, and faced addiction and recovery with brutal honesty. Carrie's battle with substance abuse in her youth nearly shattered them both, but Carol never gave up. She stood by her daughter through rehab, relapse, and redemption. Carrie emerged stronger, brighter, and fiercely talented. She became an actress, a writer, and a beacon for others facing similar struggles. Their bond was forged in fire, unbreakable, sacred. But in 2002, Carrie was diagnosed with lung cancer that spread to her brain. Carol was by her side every day, holding her hand, reading to her, singing softly when words failed. Carrie died at 38, and Carol, the woman who had made the world laugh for decades, was broken. "I didn't think I'd survive it," she admitted, "but I had to, because she would have wanted me to." That grief became a quiet undercurrent in Carol's later years. It softened her voice, deepened her reflections, and made her laughter feel even more precious. She spoke of Carrie often, not with sorrow alone, but with pride. "She was the bravest person I've ever known," Carol said. "She taught me how to live." And so Carol Burnett continued, not just as a performer, but as a mother who had loved deeply and lost profoundly. She funded addiction recovery programs, supported cancer research, and mentored young artists with the same tenderness she once gave to Carrie. Her legacy became layered, not just the Emmys, the accolades, the rankings, but the resilience. The ability to stand in front of millions and smile even when her heart was breaking. The courage to turn pain into performance and performance into healing. Carol Burnett's story is not just one of fame, it's one of endurance, of a girl who grew up in silence and found her voice through a Tarzan yell, of a woman who made the world laugh while quietly surviving heartbreak, of a mother who turned grief into grace. To honor Carol Burnett, whose life was stitched from sorrow and sewn into joy, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her legacy continue to echo in every laugh, every tear, and every soul who finds strength in storytelling. As Carol Burnett entered her later years, she became more than a legend, she became a sanctuary. For young performers, she was a mentor. For grieving families, she was a comfort. For audiences who had grown up with her, she was a reminder that joy could be both simple and profound. She didn't just represent an era, she transcended it. She continued to appear on television, not as a relic of the past, but as a living thread connecting generations. Her guest roles were often quiet, poignant, and filled with the same emotional clarity that had defined her early work. She didn't need to prove anything. She simply showed up, with grace, humor, and a heart that still beat for others. Behind the scenes, Carol remained deeply involved in philanthropy. She funded scholarships for theater students, supported addiction recovery programs in honor of Carrie, and quietly backed arts initiatives in underserved communities. She never sought credit, she simply gave. "I was given hope," she once said. "Now I try to pass it on," and she did, not just through money, but through presence. She attended student performances, wrote letters to young actors, and offered encouragement to those who felt invisible. She knew what it meant to be overlooked, and she made it her mission to ensure others wouldn't be. Her home became a haven for friends, family, and collaborators. She hosted dinners filled with laughter, storytelling, and the kind of warmth that couldn't be scripted. She was known to send handwritten notes, to remember birthdays, to show up when it mattered. Fame had never made her distant, it had made her more intentional. In interviews, she spoke of aging not with fear, but with reflection. "I've lived a full life," she said. "But I'm still learning, still laughing, still loving. Her voice, though softer, carried the same rhythm that once filled theaters. Her eyes, though lined with time, still sparkled with mischief. And when asked what she hoped people remembered, she didn't mention awards or ratings. She said, "I hope they remember that I made them feel something, that I made them laugh when they needed it most." Carol Burnett's legacy is not just in the sketches, the songs, or the accolades. It's in the way she made space for joy, for sorrow, for truth. She taught us that comedy could be kind, that vulnerability could be powerful, that even the most broken beginnings could lead to lives that heal others. She was never just a performer. She was a presence, a force, a friend. To honor Carol Burnett, whose life became a lighthouse for those navigating darkness, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every laugh shared, every kindness offered, and every soul who dares to turn pain into light. Carol Burnett's journey is not measured in trophies, ratings, or applause. It's measured in the lives she touched, the truths she dared to tell, and the grace with which she carried the unbearable. Her story is not just one of survival. It is one of transformation. Of a girl who grew up in silence and found her voice in laughter. Of a mother who faced addiction, loss, and heartbreak and still chose love. Of a woman who stood in the spotlight not to be seen but to help others feel less alone. Even in her 90s, Carol remains a force, not because she demands attention, but because she continues to earn it. Her performances in Better Call Saul and Palm Royale weren't just comebacks, they were masterclasses. Proof that age does not diminish artistry. That wisdom, when paired with courage, becomes something transcendent. She has become a symbol, not of fame, but of endurance, of what it means to keep showing up. To keep giving. To keep laughing, even when the world feels heavy. Her legacy is stitched into the fabric of American entertainment, yes. But more importantly, it's stitched into the hearts of those who saw in her a reflection of their own struggles, their own hopes, their own need to believe that joy is still possible. Carol Burnett taught us that comedy is not the absence of pain, it is the triumph over it. That kindness is not weakness, it is strength. That the most powerful performances are not the ones that win awards, but the ones that make people feel. She once said, "Only I can change my life. No one can do it for me." And she did. Again and again, through poverty, through heartbreak, through grief. She changed her life, and in doing so, she changed ours. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became legacy, whose sorrow became strength, and whose life became a beacon, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every sketch, every smile, and every soul who finds courage and joy. Even now, in her 10th decade, Carol Burnett remains a living testament to the power of perseverance. She is not merely surviving. She is still creating, still mentoring, still showing up. Her presence at award shows, tributes, and retrospectives is never ceremonial. It's magnetic. When she walks into a room, the air shifts, not because she demands reverence, but because she has earned it. She has become the elder stateswoman of comedy, the quiet matriarch of American television. Her name is spoken with the same reverence as Lucille Ball, Johnny Carson, and Sid Caesar, but unlike many of her peers, Carol's legacy is still unfolding. She continues to lend her voice to causes she believes in, to young artists who need guidance, and to audiences who still find comfort in her warmth. Her influence is everywhere, in the sketch formats of Saturday Night Live, in the emotional honesty of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, in the fearless vulnerability of performers like Kate McKinnon, Maya Rudolph, and Cecily Strong. Carol Burnett didn't just open doors, she built the hallway, and yet she remains humble. In interviews, she deflects praise with a laugh, often crediting her collaborators, her writers, her crew. "I was lucky," she says, but luck alone doesn't build a legacy. What Carol Burnett built was forged in hardship, refined through heartbreak, and delivered with a generosity that never asked for anything in return. She has said that her greatest joy is when someone tells her, "You helped me through a hard time." Because that, more than any Emmy or standing ovation, is the true measure of her impact. She didn't just entertain, she healed. She didn't just perform, she connected. And perhaps that's the most extraordinary part of her story. That a girl who once stole toilet paper from a theater bathroom, who invented a twin to feel less alone, who stood in the shadows of addiction, grief, and emotional abandonment, became the woman who made the world feel seen. Carol Burnett's life is not a fairy tale. It is a survival story, a triumph of spirit, a mosaic of laughter and loss stitched together by love. She has taught us that comedy is not the absence of pain, it is the refusal to be defined by it. That kindness is not weakness, it is the most radical form of strength. And so, as she continues to live, create, and inspire, we don't just celebrate her career, we honor her courage, her resilience, her heart. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became legacy, whose sorrow became strength, and whose life became a beacon, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every sketch, every smile, and every soul who finds courage and joy. Carol Burnett's story is not just a biography, it's a blueprint, a map for how to survive the impossible and still choose joy. She didn't just entertain America. She held its hand through decades of change, heartbreak, and healing. Her show aired during Vietnam, Watergate, civil unrest, and cultural upheaval. And yet, every week, she stood center stage and reminded us that laughter was still possible. That connection was still sacred. That kindness could still be revolutionary. She was never afraid to be silly. To wear a curtain rod as a gown, to sing off-key, to fall down, get back up, and wink at the camera. But beneath the slapstick was a woman of extraordinary depth. Her comedy was never cruel. Her satire never punched down. She made fun of the world, yes, but she never made fun of the wounded, because she knew what it meant to be one. Her characters, Eunice, Mrs. Wiggins, Nora Desmond, were not just sketches. They were portraits of longing, of absurdity, of vulnerability. She gave voice to the overlooked, the eccentric, the broken-hearted. And in doing so, she gave permission to millions to laugh at their own pain, to find beauty in their own mess. And she never stopped evolving. Even as the industry changed, as variety shows faded, as new formats emerged, Carol adapted, not by chasing trends, but by staying true to herself. She didn't need to reinvent. She simply endured. And in that endurance, she became timeless. Her memoirs are filled with wisdom, wit, and wonder. She writes not to impress, but to connect. She shares stories of backstage chaos, of personal heartbreak, of moments when she almost gave up. And through it all, she reminds us that the most important thing is to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep laughing. She has said that her greatest joy is hearing from fans who say, "You helped me through a hard time." Because that, more than any award, is the true measure of her legacy. She didn't just make people laugh, she made them feel less alone. And now, as she enters her twilight years, Carol Burnett remains a beacon, not just of comedy, but of courage, not just of talent, but of tenderness. She is proof that a life lived with authenticity, generosity, and grit can change the world. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became legend, whose sorrow became strength, and whose life became a light, comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every sketch, every smile, and every soul who finds hope in humor. Carol Burnett's life is not a closed chapter. It's a living echo. Every time a young performer steps onto a stage with trembling hands and a brave heart, her spirit is there. Every time a sketch dares to be both hilarious and heartbreaking, her fingerprints are on it. Every time someone chooses kindness over cruelty in the name of comedy, they are walking the path she carved. She didn't just change television. She changed the emotional language of entertainment. She taught us that vulnerability could be powerful, that silliness could be sacred, and that laughter could be a form of love. Her legacy is not just in the reruns, it's in the rhythm of every show that dares to be real. And even now, in her quiet days in Santa Barbara, she remains a force, not loud, not demanding, but present, intentional. Her walks through the garden, her meditations, her handwritten notes to friends and fans, these are not the habits of someone fading. They are the rituals of someone who understands that life, at its best, is a performance of grace. She has outlived many of her peers, many of her collaborators, and even her own daughter. And yet she continues, not because she must, but because she chooses to, because showing up for her family, for her fans, for herself, has always been her greatest act. Carol Burnett is not just a star, she is a constellation, a network of light that continues to guide, inspire, and illuminate. Her story reminds us that the most powerful legacy is not built in moments of triumph, but in the quiet choices to keep going, to keep loving, to keep laughing. So if her story has moved you, if you've ever found comfort in her voice, courage in her characters, or healing in her humor, let that feeling live on. Share it, speak it, pass it forward, because Carol Burnett didn't just give us time together, she gave us permission to be human. Carol Burnett's presence today is quieter but no less powerful. She no longer needs the stage to command attention. Her legacy lives in the silence between her words, in the gentle way she listens, in the way her laughter still carries the weight of everything she's survived. She is not performing now, she is reflecting. And in that reflection, she continues to teach. She spends her days surrounded by memory. Her Santa Barbara home is not a museum of fame, but a sanctuary of love. Photographs of Carrie, of her daughters, of castmates long gone. Letters from fans tucked into drawers. Books worn soft from rereading. A piano that still holds the echo of old songs. And in the quiet, she walks. She breathes. She remembers. She is still writing notes, thoughts, reflections, not for publication, but for preservation. For Dylan, her grandson, for the young performers she mentors, for herself, because words, like laughter, have always been her way through. She has said that aging is not something to fear, but something to honor. "I've earned every wrinkle," she once joked, but behind the humor is truth. Each line on her face is a story, each pause in her voice is a prayer. She is not trying to stay young, she is trying to stay present. And she is. When she appears at tributes, at award shows, at quiet gatherings of friends and peers, the room shifts, not because she is famous, but because she is beloved. Because she carries with her the memory of a time when television was intimate, when comedy was kind, when stars were human. She paved the way for women to be bold, to be messy, to be real. She showed that you could be glamorous and goofy, brilliant and broken, all at once. She didn't just open doors, she held them open, and she still does. Carol Burnett's legacy is not just in the laughter she gave, it's in the lives she lifted. In the people she protected, in the truths she dared to tell. She is a monument not to fame, but to feeling. To the idea that joy, when shared, becomes something sacred. So if her story has moved you, if you've ever felt less alone because of her voice, her smile, her courage, let that feeling live on. Share it, speak it, carry it forward, because Carol Burnett didn't just give us time together, she gave us permission to be ourselves. In the quiet of her Santa Barbara home, Carol Burnett lives not in retreat, but in reflection. Her days are filled with small rituals, morning walks under eucalyptus trees, handwritten notes to old friends, the hum of classical music drifting through sunlit rooms. She reads voraciously, often returning to memoirs, poetry, and the letters of artists who, like her, turned pain into beauty. Her shelves are lined with photographs, Carrie laughing mid-song, Tim Conway mid-prank, Harvey Korman mid-sketch. Each image a memory, each memory a thread in the tapestry of a life lived fully. She still receives letters from fans, some young discovering her for the first time through streaming platforms, others older who grew up with her voice as a constant comfort. Carol reads them all. Sometimes she responds. Sometimes she simply smiles, touched by the reminder that her work still matters, that she still matters. Her relationship with Brian Miller remains a quiet anchor. They are not a couple of spectacle, but of substance. He cooks. She tells stories. They sit together in the garden, watching the light change. He knows when to speak and when to simply be. In a life filled with applause, Brian is the silence Carol needed. She has spoken about aging with rare candor. "It's not about staying young," she said once. "It's about staying curious." And she has. Whether it's a new play, a young comedian's debut, or a scientific article on neuroplasticity, Carol remains engaged. She is not nostalgic, she is present. She doesn't long for the past. She honors it, then turns the page. Her legacy is not just in the sketches or the songs. It's in the way she made people feel. Safe, seen, lifted. She gave permission to be imperfect, to be silly, to be sincere. She showed that comedy could be a bomb, that vulnerability could be a superpower, and that the most profound truths often arrive wrapped in laughter. And even now, as she nears her 92nd birthday, Carol Burnett continues to teach us, not through performance, but through presence. through the way she carries herself, through the way she continues to love, to give, to endure. She is not just a legend, she is a lighthouse, a reminder that even in the darkest moments there is light, that even in the deepest grief there is grace, that even in the quietest corners of life there is meaning. To honor Carol Burnett, whose laughter became legacy, whose sorrow became strength, and whose life became a guide. Comment 92, her age, or simply write Carol Burnett. Let her story continue to echo in every laugh, every act of kindness, and every soul who finds courage and joy.